Ladies and gentlemen, we are deeply saddened and shocked in Bahrain by the news that more than 30 innocent civilians were killed and 190 were injured in the takfiri terrorist attacks that did not only target the people of Brussels and European nations, but targeted the principles of humanity and peace. I would like to extend my deepest condolences and sympathy to the families and friends of the victims of these attacks. At this critical stage in our history, we all have a joint responsibility to collaborate at an international level to eradicate the sources, motivators, and legitimizers of terrorism once and for all. Condemning these barbaric, hateful acts of terrorism is not enough. Unless governments, religious leaders, and non-state actors undertake the responsibility of dismantling the foundations of ISIL and other terrorist groups, terrorism will unfortunately continue. Any approach that fails to cover the core relationship between takifirism and terrorist acts committed in the name of religion is incomplete. Boko Haram, Al-Qaeda, ISIS, ISIL, and other terrorist organizations are offsprings and symptoms of takifirism. Unless violent takifirism is disintegrated, these terrorist groups will continue, or new terrorist groups will emerge and arise with new names. The impact of hate fatwas that praise hostility towards non-Muslims and legitimize the acts of violence and discrimination and terrorist activities around the world is unfortunately underestimated in the global war against terrorism. The accelerated expansion of terrorist networks across the world will not come to a halt without dismantling the ideological foundations and institutions that grant indirectly and sometimes directly legitimacy to the acts of terrorism. In order to succeed in countering violent extremism, we must acknowledge that the best breeding ground for terrorism is the absence of democracy, social, economic, and political exclusion, and human rights violations. Democracy can help societies rectify unjust conditions that fuel extremism and violence, fostering a pluralistic, integrated society that enjoys freedom of religion and freedom of expression has a huge impact on how communities view differences and resolve their conflicts and disagreements. Countries that fail to respect universal human rights, countries that practice systematic religious-based discriminations, countries that fail to foster religious freedom and freedom of worship for all, publicly or privately, countries that fail to ensure that religious and ethnic minorities are properly represented, countries that punish those who express indifferent views cannot be expected to genuinely counter extremism. As extremism grows in our region, moderate voices are being suppressed, criminalized, and extinguished. Moderate voices that call for human rights, democracy, religious freedom, and countering discrimination and extremism have been silenced by non-democratic governments, while state privileges are being granted in some countries to hardliners who oppose fostering religious freedom for all and praise the practice of discrimination and human rights violations. Thus, those who intend and should be on the civil and political and religious front line of countering violent extremism are continuously facing harassments, restrictions, and censorship. Military actions will not end terrorist attacks without partnering with non-state actors, especially religious leaders, in dismantling the ideological, destructive foundations of violent takifirism. More and more non-state players need to get directly involved in on-the-ground initiatives to counter the growth of violent extremism all through the region and in the entire world. Finally, I would like to re-express my solidarity with the people of Belgium and express my sincere sympathy with the friends and families of the victims. I reassure you that we will continue our firm commitment to work on countering violent extremism in the region whilst promoting democracy, religious freedom, and defending human rights. Thank you.